recording, and then when that's done, whenever you want to start,
Is, Jeremy or,
there's
Tom here yet?
on.
I don't know if Jeremy was, I thought his last person wasn't quite sure.
Alan,
Yeah.
do you have something you wanted to share from a screen perspective?
Yes, that would be great. Is that possible?
Yep, I can make you a co-host, but remember, I can also unmake you a co-host.
Got it.
All right, so you're a co-host, so when it comes time to share, you will be able to share.
Okay, thanks.
We made some changes. They had a couple of cities that had interesting meetings, because anybody joining a random meeting, which anybody could do, could also then share their screen. So they learned the hard way that wasn't a good idea. Jody, who's running at you?
I guess so, yeah, let me text Chris, she was supposed to be here.
Maybe it's just a minute after.
Yeah. She probably was working too.
And Mike is going to be late too. He had an appointment that was running a little bit late,
Okay.
so.
Okay. Well, I guess we can, call it to order. It's just basically us, so, Jeremy's out of town, Tom's out of town, he was gonna try to call in, so not sure if he's gonna make it or not. And then, Chris might be en route, I'm not sure, she hasn't answered back yet, so,
And Lonnie's available, should we need to dial
okay.
her in, we have that option available too.
So let's just, Alan, are you ready to do your presentation?
I sure am, yeah. I would
Yeah.
love if I were able to reach a wider audience, but it sounds like some people might not be able to show up.
Yeah, Jeremy and Tom are out of town. So yeah, we're mainly here today to talk about the resort tax budget for this next term. So that's why we're having this meeting out of sequence, because we have to come to some type of agreement with recommendations for our next council meeting, so, which is next Tuesday, so.
Sounds great. I
So-
can't actually see who's there. I just see the City of Red Lodge emblem. Do you guys have a camera?
Yep.
Oh, hey, all right. Awesome. Well, yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity to
Okay.
speak tonight. Is this a good time to start?
Yep, go ahead, Chris is just getting here, so.
Okay, great. Mr. Mayor, can I go ahead and screen share?
Yep, you have the ability to share at your leisure.
All right, let me get that going. Share. Boom, there you go. Wonderful. Hey, thank you guys for the opportunity to present tonight. This is the Sustainability Board input to the Resort Tax Committee regarding their upcoming budget. I'll try to make this quick because I think you all have probably heard this before. Number one is to replace the old public EV chargers. That would be about $3,000. Number two is to stencil paint EV parking only on those 4 parking spots. That's about $1,000. Number three is a grant match for solar carport at the EV charging station, and also co-located a rooftop solar array at the public restrooms. These Northwestern Energy grant applications are going to be due on November 1st. That's $5,000. So we're talking about a $9,000 total ask. These projects are strategically aligned, highly visible, synergistic, future-oriented. They leverage a whole lot of grants. Northwestern Energy plus multiple federal renewable energy credits. They would save the city about $1,500 per year in electricity costs. They would expand EV charger access to the public. They would support the original vision for the EV charging station and also the goals of the Energy Conservation Plan, which they could be met earlier than otherwise. And it very importantly has the support of Public Works. So this is the current EV charger situation. There's 2 posts. There's one here and one here. This charger on the far right works quite well. We replaced that at a cost of $1,000 last summer. This charger here is broken. This charger here works, but it honestly belongs in a museum. It's 8 years old, as are all these three. And this fourth charger over here is broken. So we'd be talking about replacing those 1, 2, 3 chargers. The next thing would be stencil painting EV charging parking only on here, 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 and here. And then the next thing would be a solar carport, which would cover those 4 parking spots to provide some protection from the elements for both the users and also the new EV charging equipment. And then lastly, some solar panels here on the public restrooms roof to cover its electricity usage. This is straight from the city's website. This was back in June of 2016 when the city of Red Lodge installed those 4 public EV charging stations. So that's fantastic. That's great for the city. I'm so proud of them. That's so very future oriented. And the city paid nothing for those EV chargers. It was funded by a grant from this nonprofit and this small startup electric car company. And it was part of the original vision of the city to install solar panels on the site to provide the energy used by those EV charging stations. And the charging station, the EV chargers look like this. They cost about $500 each, and with installation, it should cost about $1,000 each. And as I said, 2 of those chargers are broken. Another one belongs in a museum because it's so worn out. And the charger types themselves would be future-proof. There's 2 types of charger standards, but they would be future-proofed. And then on top of all that, there would also be a 30% federal rebate on the cost that we spend for the EV chargers. Next thing is to stencil paint EV charging only. It would look something like this. Right now, there's only a small sign that's posted, and it's really hard for people to see. And I see literally every day gasoline cars block those spots and block the limited access, even when there's plenty of other parking in that area. And added signage such as these stencil painted signs will prevent that, allow greater access. And then number 3 is a $5,000 grant match for the solar carport and the restroom roof solar panels. And we anticipate that would be through Northwestern Energy Solar grants. We're batting 1,000 in recent memory for those solar charging, solar panel grants through Northwestern Energy. The library, the pool, and 2 more of which are currently under construction, the recycling center and the public works building. Historically, Northwestern Energy has required a 10 to 15% match, so that's how we came up with a $5,000 number. And so the upcoming November 1 grant cycle would be for the solar carport at about that much, and also the solar panels on the roof of the public restrooms. And talk about excellent visibility for the resort tax fund and the committee, because we could put up a sign. This is my rendition of a sign right here, right next to the EV chargers and the solar carport, saying how they're supported by the resort tax fund. The solar carport for the EV chargers might look something like this. It's actually a pretty good similar rendition. 4 parking spots, solar panels form the energy generation and also the protection from the elements. A design like this, which could have only 2 cement posts, maybe mounted up on the curb, that would keep them from getting snow plowed. And I'm meeting with Kim Kapalka of the Arts Guild this Friday regarding their input on the aesthetics and how it might affect their Arts Guild, and maybe they would have some great input as well on the design of it. The restroom's rooftop solar panel is pretty straightforward, again expected to generate all the electricity consumed on the site and would be mounted on their south-facing roof. And for both projects, once you consider the $5,000 city match that we're proposing, less the 30% federal tax, federal credit, direct pay credit, and consider the annual production of energy and assuming a 12 cents per kilowatt hour, we're looking at a payback period of an astonishingly 2 years and 5 months. So in summary, the Sustainability Board is recommending that the Resort Tax Committee consider funds to replace the old EV chargers, stencil paint EV charge parking only to expand public access, and grant matching funds for the solar carports and rooftop solar at the restrooms for a total of $9,000 ask. I have 3 more slides I'd like to get through. At the last Resort Tax Committee meeting, someone raised the question, should the Resort Tax Fund pay for future grant matches? I think that's an excellent idea. And eyes on the big goal, I would just like to raise this possibility of a $1.5 million grant for a solar plus battery microgrid out at the wastewater treatment plant. So these solar panels generate the electricity during the day. Batteries similar to these store the electricity for usage during night. It would result in an astonishing $60,000 of energy cost savings per year ongoing. And it would provide resilience for the wastewater treatment plant. I'm talking about when the electrical grid goes out, like during a flood or a fire or whatever, the wastewater treatment plant still keeps going. And a microgrid like this would cut the city's CO2 emissions in half and would achieve the energy conservation plan goals something like a decade early. Now, a big if is if the Public Works Department deems this to be appropriate. The next step in this is first to obtain a grant for a feasibility study, and I do have some leads on that, and then to see what the feasibility study comes back with in terms of their analysis of the wastewater treatment plant. Here's one possible future that I like the Resort Tax Committee to bear in mind. If there is a scenario where we could get a $1.5 million grant from the Department of Environmental Quality from the state of Montana under their SEP program. These are earmarked funds which they have dedicated for microgrids across the state. And I think we have a pretty decent chance of getting this. Why? Because Kyla Mackey at the DEQ has told me that I'm the only person who has inquired about this. It's been sitting around for about a year and a half. And I would say there's a chance that they may require only a $40,000 match. Why? Because that's the cap on the state's Green Loan Fund, the AERLP. And the Green Loan Fund office and the Montana DEQ are in close proximity, and I'm guessing they talk to each other. Now, if that were the case, it would make more sense for the Resort Tax Committee to select to pay that match rather than take the actual green loan itself. Why? Because it is a fixed 4% loan interest rate, and that would compare, as we talked about at the last meeting, of a less than 2% interest rate for the pool loan, which there has been some talk about paying back and whether that would make sense. Now, if you crank the math, after the 30% federal tax credit, we're talking about a $28,000 city cost divided by a $60,000 annual savings to come up with a 5-month payback period. And big picture, the free money era for projects such as these is going to be ending soon. I believe we're past the midway mark. Why? Because it is becoming more and more understood and adopted. And I believe that if we don't act now, chances are going to be much more limited in the future. And finally, the Sustainability Board thanks you for your attention. And if anyone would like a copy of this presentation, please give me an email at allencbest@gmail.com. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can I say I'm impressed?
Good job, Alan.
Do you have a timer going? You had 6 seconds left.
Perfect. I did have a timer going.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Alan before we move on here?
Alan, I'm emailing you now to get a copy of that.
Sorry, yeah, who was that?
Chris.
Chris, hi.
Gotcha. I'd be happy to send it to you.
Okay.
A lot of information.
Yeah, it is. Thank you, Alan, for putting that together. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Well, next we have our budget, our resort tax portion of the budget. I thought it would be easiest to, we have a detailed resort tax budget, and then we have Tom's condensed version. Dave, do you want to?
And then we have the updated versions from Tom's condensed version.
Okay, I don't have that.
July 9th is not updated anymore.
No, July 31st is actually.
So,
We'll need a copy of that then.
well, this is one that Tom sent out via this. So I have what the city has, and it's, like I said, this is already outdated. You just missed the presentation, sir.
Can you make copies?
I can't. What do you, let me do copies of this?
I didn't see it get
Yeah, and then or I can, here, I have,
Well, you're gonna send it to a printer that we don't have access to, or I can go grab my keys and then we do.
okay.
But I just go make half dozen copies of this.
Okay, yeah, 'cause I don't have that one. The-
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay. So I'm sending you the budget that Lonnie sent me for the resort tax, and I'm sending it to you too, Joy. It's the more detailed version versus what Tom's is, the condensed version, so.
That's nice.
Thank you.
So what I'm handing out is a hard copy of what Tom emailed out. It has some scribbles on it.
What did he
Pardon?
What did
He sent it to everybody on the resort tax committee.
I think so, yeah, it was a Google Doc. He just shared his link. You should already have access to it, but he just shared his link to it again.
So there was a couple of concerns. If you look down on the total, there was two kind of significant differences. So first off, his interest income is, if you look at the just top part in the brackets, which is revenue, he had estimated 10,000, it was actually 21K. The pool fees, he had at 70 and it's just under 60. So those
Okay.
two numbers are off a little bit.
But they kind of make a wash there, right?
Pardon?
One's down 10 and one's up 10. So
Yeah,
they're like kind of a wash.
fairly close. So he had come up with a number of 2.7, where we had come up with the city, we had a number of 2.6. But part of that, part of it was, we had 500 for kind of that wiggle room space to make sure we don't end up giving money back if, property taxes, if we have to basically avoid the year. I know you know what I'm talking about. So, for everybody else, about 4 years ago, you can only spend resort tax dollars that are budgeted. So we learned several years ago when I was on council that it bites you to be conservative. So what happened is COVID came along and suddenly our tax collections were $500,000-600,000 more than what we had thought it was and budgeted, and we couldn't spend it. All we could do was go through the extra paperwork and process to give that back as reduced property taxes. So it was a lot of work, and just as importantly, it was money that was collected for the purposes of improving the city that we weren't able to spend for that. And so there has been a tendency since that time to put in a line item that basically says, park improvements or some payoff debt early. For example, the pool, that gives us the ability to have an overage that's kind of a cushion. And we had 500 and he had 600,000. So that was where those differences.
But just on, what we have to, just to clarify, what you need to budget for is your estimated revenue. Because that's what you have to.
But you have to include that within your estimated revenue to cover it.
Right, but the revenue side, if we say we're going to collect $1 million in resort taxes next year, and we end up collecting 1.3 million, then you have to return the 3 million. I mean,
yeah.
300,000.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
So,
but that's in the revenue side, not the expenditure side, because you can
well,
always.
but you account for it on both sides. So our number had 500,000, Tom's number had 600,000, I happen to lean toward the 600,000. So but again,
Right.
I lived through the getting burned.
Right, and so, and this 2.1 million, also includes, our cash balance that we're carrying over of resort tax, 827,000,
Correct.
correct. So, I guess,
So there's another implication of that. When you budget how much you're gonna be paying for tax relief, the $90,000 is if we collected 1.8. If we collected 1.9, which is bumping all those numbers up, then we'd be we'd be paying back 95,000. Now, in actuality, we'll pay back 5%, which is really kind of funny that he has the percentage over there, 414. The reality is it will be 5% of whatever the actual is what we will pay back.
collected, yes. So
And-
the 600,000 is, we're going to say we're going to collect 1.9 million then.
1.9 million.
Okay. Okay.
So then the other thing that Tom kind of called out, was there is, and it's down under capital projects. His concern was that if we paid 400 for EDA grants, which was just a placeholder in here, and then if we also paid 523 for a vac truck, that left us down at cash reserves of 25,000, which was a little bit scary. And I don't disagree with that. The EDA grants we confirmed today are elsewhere, so those are non-existent on here. So that 400,000 for EDA grants is not gonna be part of this budget any longer.
Why not? I'm sorry.
Because we already have the money elsewhere in other grants. So it was identified as others, but we needed to validate and verify, and we have
Nice.
since been able to validate and verify.
Okay, so we can scratch the 400,000 EDA grants.
The 400,000 EDA grant is gone,
It's
which
gone.
now means
Okay.
your cash reserve, should all of that wonderful happen, is
That's great news. Then we can get the
400,000
back
higher.
truck, right?
Yeah,
So, perfect.
because, yeah, then it would, just to make sure I'm understanding, and just repeat what you just said. Since the EDA grant is accounted elsewhere, we can afford the back truck, and then we still have more than in our cash reserve. Okay,
You repeated that back correctly.
okay, just wanted to make sure.
Read back is correct.
Okay. No, that's great.
What do you normally keep in the reserves in there?
Historically, too much. So like if you go up and look at our end of year cash reserve, we've got 800,000. And where this whole conversation started out was, we have no need to keep $800,000. And so we should be using it to pay down debt. But then when you identify the need of the back truck, why are we paying down debt at what, 1.5 or 2%, and then paying an extra 150,000 for a lease on a, financially, it makes more sense to continue to pay off the low interest rate loan and pay cash for the expenditures up front. My 2 cents, and again, this is the extra conservative side, if you go through and you look at, and it's not been tallied up on here, but if you go through and look at worst case scenario of what would happen, like resort tax gets totally hammered, there's a lot of these obligations that we have that are like payments. If you got a house payment or a car payment, those aren't going away. So when you look at water and sewer and pool payments, a lot of those things are set payments that are there. And I kind of like the idea of having cash on hand to cover half of that, meaning I don't think we're ever going to have a resort tax year that's, a fourth of the previous years. But if we had a year that was half as what we, of what the previous years was, do we still have enough cash on hand to round it out? So I don't object to having cash on hand.
So you're saying, for instance, if this subtotal of 1,049,000 and dropping out that 400,000 in a capital project would leave us 425 cash reserve? That'd be 40%.
Well, but if you look up at that 1 million, not all of that 1 million is obligated funds. So like
Okay.
operation and maintenance doesn't fall into that. There are things like, if one of you loses a job in your house and you were gonna buy a car next year, you say, oh, we're not buying the car next year.
Gotcha.
So there are things that you have the ability to say, and this is one of the things we do consistently from a budget standpoint, is going back to the earlier thing that Jody, we have to budget for it, but you can't budget in a way that you're dependent on it, because what happens if you don't get it? So that's why you say, pay off debt, $500,000.
And we had just, the last couple of years, we just had it in there as recreational development is what we put it in there as. And we had
Yeah.
like 400,000 in streets, like if we, you know,
So what
by
are the
chance.
true musts on here? Water, sewer, pool, principal, and interest, what else?
I
Streets,
think,
we have to pay for
Tax
our
relief.
parks guy and the
yeah,
pool
we
wages
have one
and
salary
the street.
position in there.
So, the only thing that's not, I guess, we'd hate to defer parks projects, because that's probably, you know, things that need to, really the only thing would be the police car, they might not get a police car this year. I don't think they really had it in their budget anyway this coming year.
So which categories exactly then? So tax relief, water, sewer, pool, principal, and interest, and what's the other one?
And then there's an employee in parks operation and maintenance.
And streets operation and maintenance.
Yeah,
So-
it's one employee split across those two.
But I think it's also, the streets is also buying asphalt and things like that. I mean, there's some things in, you know, so we can fill our potholes, and so we can, you know, there's a
Well,
lot.
if there was absolute famine, we'd say, tough, drive around the pothole.
Well, that's what we, yeah. Until Mike came here, that's what we were doing all the time anyway, so.
No, but that's what I'm saying, right? And that's, the other part of that is, that's what's nice about your capital projects, one and done. Now you're not making any future commitments. When I was on council and we had actually considered language, like not more than 50% could be obligated. So because we wanted to leave it, you could make it, we wanted future councils to have the ability to make decisions about what to do, as opposed to being a kid first day out of college and all of your paycheck is allocated on payments, and now you don't get to choose to go on a vacation next year because your money is already all obligated.
Right. So, I guess, you know, because we still have to, I mean, if we're going to say that we're gonna budget revenue at almost 2.8 million, I guess you've got 2.69, so 2.7 million.
But the
We
difference
still-
there is the 1.8, so your 2.7 is now correct. When we changed
Okay.
to 1.9 rather than 1.8,
Okay.
that solved that problem.
So, okay, so we're estimating that, so we still have to, I mean, we're at 2.1 here, and now we've taken out the 400,000. So we still have to put a budget line item in there, don't we?
For,
Can you put it as reserves, or, like, put 400,000 in reserves, or do you have to budget that 400,000?
do you mean your park improvement line item?
Yeah,
No, that
recreational
is a,
development,
that is a, so that 400,000 that's no longer EDA grant,
right.
that would turn into,
We did a recreational development, is what we
yeah,
called it before.
recreational development.
Or do you just put streets, and if we, you know, I mean, but can we just say we want reserves of 400,000?
We can recommend whatever we'd like.
I mean,
And
we
I'm
have
not-
to, I guess that's just it. I mean, if we want to say we want cash reserves of 500,000,
Let me put my 2-cent spin on it.
Okay.
What I would like to do is have something that's some sort of a formula, and granted, it's just a recommendation,
mhm.
that makes this process easier going forward. That
Yeah.
cash reserve is gonna be 50% of the
Obligated.
obligated stuff
Right.
from next year. Now, the nice thing about this is, by the time we get here, we're talking August. We already know what this year looks like, right? We already have a fair feel.
Yeah, you should know what our July 20th collections were, how much we collected, you know, and how everybody's summer's going by now. You know, that should be a pretty good precursor to October, too.
The other thing on the, if you wanted to have a little more in the reserve, you could split some of that back truck out of sewer and water. I don't know that I wanna do 50, 25, 25, but we could
But
do
30,
like-
30, 30?
We could do, 70, 15, 15, or some, I don't know.
Yeah, we just didn't want you to,
Something like
we
that,
didn't want you to,
about 60 grand out of you.
yeah, we just didn't want you to deplete your reserves on that with all the projects coming up.
And that's, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was our
We're
recommendation,
gonna burn them up,
yeah,
so it's all gonna get spent either way.
yeah.
So,
just a quick question, and I don't necessarily want to get this off track, but I don't want to forget. So if for this 9,000 that they are suggesting from the sustainability committee, could we just put that in as a capital project? And, I mean, again, I think I would recommend that we do that because it seems, especially since we don't need the EDA stuff, and it sounds like our cash reserves are going to be close to where we want it. It looks like that's a pretty big impact for a small amount.
Yeah.
I would agree with that.
And I think
So one question that I have on that, so, and we've had this conversation, so Alan has come to Parks and he's come to Council and he's come to there. One of the issues we have, and it's interesting because we work sustainability into every conversation we have. So if we have a pool budget, is there an opportunity to put solar panels out there? You know, so to take that to the nth degree, we need a vac truck. Do they make an electric vac truck? No, they don't make an electric vac truck that'll work for us, so that's not a good place to use it. So one of the questions is, those solar stations down there, what are they? Meaning, electric park? What is it? Right now, we pay it, and we actually just pay it out of our city lights budget. There is no line item in the history of this town for all of those e-charging stations. Where do we create it?
Well, and I kind of talked to Corey a little bit about that's kind of been the issue that we're having. So I think what we need to do I think we need to go to the auditors and say, you know, that she thought the most logical thing would be to have it be part of streets and roads, because the vehicles need to charge to drive on our roads, and it's part of that infrastructure.
Yeah.
But I think we just need to clear that with our auditors to make sure that's an acceptable place to have it. And then because if it is part of the streets and roads, then it would be resort tax eligible at that point.
And the solar panels on the bathrooms would be part of parks, I would think.
Right, because it is part of the
You have to
park.
remember, it's basically a gas station. Free. That's what it is.
City gas station for e-vehicles?
I mean.
We have a bathroom and a fill up.
That's what it is. So it doesn't really fit into parks, and I don't know how it fits into streets either,
Well,
to be honest with you. I mean, it's a great
panel.
idea. I think it needs its own budget.
So the panels on the bathroom would be parks, because that's part of the park, right? And it would be funding
The public bathrooms are, yeah.
electrical.
Well, I think, are we talking about new charging stations?
So there's two different things.
Three things.
Or
Yeah, there's three things, but number one is the charging stations and painting the parking area there. And to me, if you can, you know, it's to offer that service so people can drive.
You can
So,
go to our town and visit our town,
yeah.
money in our town.
So, and I don't remember in our resort tax if we actually have a line item for tourist infrastructure, so to speak, because really that's really what it is. It's tourist infrastructure. I'd have to.
So obviously, there's costs associated with it today to pay the bill. Where is that paid from today?
City lights.
City lights, okay.
Yeah, and that's ridiculous. Yeah, it shouldn't be that way.
I just think the best way to do it is create its own budget.
Yeah, and we just want to make,
Like water has its own budget, parks have its own budget, pool has its own.
yeah. And
Because it really doesn't fit into any of those budgets, at least I haven't pulled it.
you know, so we just have to figure out if it's resort tax eligible then. If we're not putting it under streets, I don't know that it is.
If it's not under streets and it's not under parks,
Parks.
and it's its own line item.
Mhm.
Now, having said that, we're still, in fact, the solar panels on top of the bathroom, we're already looking at, yes? Hey, there's
No.
Tom.
We're just, we're talking about putting in a grant for
And then we would have a match,
it, to have a match if we were to get.
and that's what he spoke to, is the match.
Yeah, we really haven't quite figured out conceptually whether that would be for the bathrooms and those, or whether it's going on parking, gazebo, bill. I think, you know, we don't know quite what it looks like yet.
Okay,
Tom, so
I
just
like the little parking
to
structure.
bring you up to speed really quick, sir,
absolutely.
Okay.
You too.
the EDA 400 no longer exists in the resort tax.
Okay,
We
great.
jumped our numbers up, pardon? the EDA grant match that you had down under capital projects
Yep.
no longer needs to come out of resort tax. We
Okay,
confirmed
that's
that we have that elsewhere.
All right. Yeah, that-
The second thing is, we were running our numbers on a $1.8 million budget. Yours is on 1.9. So when we do that, then the tax relief portion goes up to 95,000 rather than 90, which also makes our percentage be back to the 5%, which makes sense there, rather than 4.14%.
Yeah, even the 90 is high. So
Well,
you know,
yeah, we won't pay that unless we collect it.
yeah, so I left it at 90, but realistically it should be 5% of 1.36. I'd have to look up that number exactly, but whatever that, let me just grab it here.
Why do you not set it for what the safe number is, the safe harbor number?
Because that comes out of the additional safe harbor expenditure. So what happens is you have $600 in extra income, 600,000 in extra income, and 600,000 in extra expenses. If you brought in that extra income, then it would come out of that extra expense. Is how that would work. You can do it either way, Dave. It doesn't really matter. But just to build yourself a more realistic budget, you would do the 90 should be based on the 1.37. And I don't have my calculator here, but I can.
No, that's all right. I've got the note there, and I can relay that along. And then we have a meeting with the auditors, so we can get their way in too.
Yeah.
So then the second.
Well,
the second thing
it's honestly not an auditor question. It's just simply a budgeting question, right? It's really just how you build that budget. And so, except when you don't do something right, what did I do? All right, I'm doing something wrong and just building the calculation. So, in any case, it's something like 70. Sorry, go ahead, Dave.
The other thing that was kind of the second part of this was where you came in. So you missed Alan's presentation where he talked about some solar panels. He talked about the EV charging stations. And one of the questions and concerns is, where do those really fit? Right now, we don't have a budget item. We just pay that electric out of the lights. And so this is so how do we create an account for those? But then if they're not streets and they're not parks, Jody's question is, are they resort tax eligible? If it's basically tourist infrastructure or whatever, what do we call them? If it's not streets, if it's not parks, we still may budget those things, but are they resort tax eligible?
Can you, the item is again, I missed it at the beginning there.
So he's talking about replacing the EV chargers and doing some painting at the EV chargers and adding some solar panels to the EV chargers.
Their ask is $9,000 total for the grant match.
Yeah, I think that I think it's resort tax eligible. I'd have to pull the ordinance to really pick it, but I think you're right. I think it's tourism infrastructure, which is allowed. I mean, it could go into parks too. It's an amenity in the park is essentially what it is.
Tom, yeah. Mike's position was it was an amenity. It was a gas station in the park.
Yeah, I mean it is. I mean it's definitely eligible, but you just have to figure out where it fits. If you want to use it as a grant match, you can. I believe you can do it. You just have to figure out. We'd have to just figure out where it fits in.
It's not all a grant match.
Well, the 9,000. Well, 1,000
some of it
of
was
it.
painting.
Yeah, 1,000 of it was to paint EV charger only parking, which would be, that could be a street, so that would be eligible for resort
Street
tax.
signs, yeah.
Yeah, street sign, that type of stuff. And then 5,000 was a grant match for the solar panels for the EV chargers and the bathroom, the public bathroom there. And then 3,000 was to help replace 3 of the EV chargers.
What, so I know that you were talking about having like kind of general categories so that we, have for budget, we can plan for it if we end up having it. So what if we did add something for, have a tourism infrastructure line item?
Or just, well, what I was thinking, under capital projects, could we just do a line item that says grant match for capital projects and put $10,000 in it?
That was true.
And then that way it's budgeted, and then it's up to Public Works on how that's allocated, or if it's allocated. We might not get the grant. Council may say or Mike may say this isn't gonna work, here, because that's happened in the past.
And I will tell you from a mayor planning the budget thing, I'm much more likely to look at something like that because it's a one-time expense, being down in capital projects as opposed to adding it to the reoccurring, right? If you want to do X because you have money that year, that's great. That's where resort tax is. It's not so we can borrow ourselves to prosperity.
Right, and then, and perhaps it's that Mike and the Sustainability Board get together during budget season and say, we're gonna apply for these grants. Can you put that line item in for a match under capital projects? And then we'll know it might change every year. It might not be anything. It could be 25,000. I don't know. So I'm open, guys. What do you?
I don't have a problem with what you're talking about. I think figuring out how it fits in is just, that would take a little bit, but it's easy to do. I think the question is, does the resort tax committee approve of that as an expenditure of resort tax funds is what we have to answer. And then the council can figure out how to fit it in to the piece.
Okay. Anything? Okay. So I guess, yeah.
I had one question for Tom on your budget. The
Yeah.
future collections reserve of 600,000, is that basically the offset of our covering our bases? That's the difference between the 1.3 and the 1.9? Or the 2.9?
That's exactly correct. So what I tried
Okay.
to do there is to show that to build this out pretty clearly, because I think in our previous budgets it was really pretty hard to interpret exactly what was happening. And so how this builds it out is it says, hey, we're expecting a $1,370 income, and we have $827 in cash, and we expect to get interest of 10 and pool fees of 70, and so that's 21,970. So then we built an expenditure of that 21,972 is actually, I got something funky there, but and then what happens is you've got this 600.
You keep putting your hand on top of the mic.
Sorry. Then you've got this $600,000, expected or extra income that you're budgeting for, and then you've got this $600,000 reserve to expend that if it comes in. Which the reality is, if it comes in, you're probably not going to expend it anyway in this budget year. You're going to hold it over for next budget year to expend it and hold it in as additional cash in this budget year. But if there was an emergency or something, you could expend it.
So if I look at this as a worst case and a best case, and we take that EDA grant line out, does that mean our cash reserve at the end of the year is back up to 425?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay. Is that within your realm? I was being more conservative at how much we wanted to hold over than you were initially. Is 425 high, low, magically right?
That's, you had requested 300. I think it's plenty. I think 400 is plenty. I think it's probably, Absent a project, it maybe is a little high, but I don't think it's bad to carry over that cash at all.
Okay. It's not 827.
No, it's not 827, but I think probably it will get closer to that because when I look at some of our budget numbers, actually, there's a lot of stuff that we're not expending and haven't expended for 3 years, but we still budget for. So there's some, and I think it's just knowing that there's some extra built into that is important.
Is that the 40K for street signs you're referring to specifically?
Well, it's part of that, but if you look in streets, we've got, the streets budget went up significantly. And we also budget, I think there's $40,000 for equipment repair or something like that in there that we've never spent. And, but if something breaks, they want to have it kind of thing. And so there's a couple of those
Gotcha.
kinds of items in there.
Right. Okay.
All right.
So,
I'm sitting on a dock in Maine with my family on my 30th wedding anniversary. So that's all. That's unless you got questions for me, I'll let you guys finish the meeting.
All right.
I have a question for your wife, but maybe now's not the time.
Yeah, probably now's not the time.
Happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary.
Yes. Thank you for calling in.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
So at our next city council meeting on Tuesday, are we at the point where resort tax needs to present our recommendation to council on how this will be spent?
My understanding is that you want to do that, and absolutely, now, it'll be you doing it, or you two speaking to it, it'll be reflected in the budget,
Okay,
or you can update this number.
okay,
I also anticipate that our budget right now, as will be posted before Tuesdays, is really, really close to a final. I would say our budget is just about done now.
Okay.
There's a couple of, you're talking about adding 9,000, that's not
Yeah,
life altering.
yeah, okay, yeah, no, it's not at all, especially, carrying over 400,000. I think that we could, I personally feel that that's a good spot for it, to just put that line item in there for grant match for capital sustainability projects, however you want to say that. I know we do grant matches for other things.
Did you just forward it to me?
Like,
Is that what the email I got from you was?
Yeah,
Thank you.
so, well, and it wasn't all grant match fund. I mean, 1,000
No,
of it was
1,000 was
for
paint.
paint.
And that's a high estimate.
Yeah,
And that's,
but,
again, we can take that from the street.
That's if we hired it out, not if we do it ourselves.
right. Do you have an artist? I know, do you have an artist? Did you see how fancy that was? I was like, just saying. Yeah, there you go. I'm very happy that we're gonna be able to get the back truck and that we found the money for the EDA grant elsewhere. So I think that's gonna be huge.
Do you have an objection with us allocating 523 out of resort tax so we don't tap in further into our?
I don't, because I think that's a good use of the funds, and I know there's just so many water and sewer projects that have to get done. And to me, I mean, we need those reserves to go towards those projects and not towards, I mean, the back truck is very important too, but it's something we can spend the resort tax on. So, that's just my personal
And my
opinion.
2 cents is, I would rather see what we see here, where half of what's being spent is capital projects rather than obligated dollars, because that way if there's a bad year,
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, who knew that COVID was gonna be a boom for it,
Right. How many speed trailers is that, 30,000?
So it's not really speed trailers, what they are is 3 electronic speed feedback signs, so it's basically the same thing that you see as you come, is what we
Yeah.
allocated through there. I don't know where he came up with trailers, but I happen to know what he's talking about, so.
Right. And there again.
They're called vehicle speed feedback signs, is the technical term. And that's putting them at all of the entrances into town, with the exception of coming down
308.
308. So you've got them on both ends of 212 and 78.
Yeah,
There's a stop sign that takes care of it as you come in the other direction.
well, you get a lot of complaints about speeders on, 212 south and 212 north,
Well, those
so.
308 people are gonna hopefully hit the hit the one, I mean.
Well, they're already in
depending on-
town, so they're gonna hit a 35 and a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit sign. It's
Does-
the people
it-
coming from 60 and 70
Yeah.
that need
Yeah.
Where
reminded,
would it go on the south end of town?
Forrest?
There's some regulations that MDOT has given us as far as, so it's basically probably like 50 feet past where the sign is that's already there, that says the speed limit sign. So there's some
South
regulations.
of the Chateau Rouge maybe, or?
I think it'd be a little bit further up than that, because it
Maybe
actually
the-
slows down prior to that. So the question is,
Forest
which
Service?
speed limit do you wanna tie it lower and have it be 25, or do you wanna have it upstream and have it be barking 35? And
I would
think-
say 35.
I think that's the
Yeah,
inclination.
because that's, people are still going 70 and yeah.
The answer is, we've started those discussions, we've had them with MDOT, we've talked to the police chief
Yeah.
about them, and now we're at the point, let's get them in the budget, and then we'll fine tune them and get them installed next year, and that'll be some of those questions. But that's the thought process, is that it would be coming south, probably either after the 45 or the 35, probably after the first 35, similar here at the 35, and similar, so just as soon
Right
as,
when it changes.
right after the 35, there's a distance about how far we have to be past that, like 50 feet or something. I don't remember off the top of my head, that was a
Right.
February conversation.
And when's the roundabout going in at 2 Mile? Because that's gonna slow down traffic anyway.
That's lifetimes away. That's,
Is Did it get delayed again?
it's, yeah, I don't know that it has a date right now.
Okay,
And as an FYI, one of the things that I've heard several times in error is people talking about like a bypass that
Mhm.
went down
There
to there.
used to be a
The bypass actually was in Fox.
spot.
And it was actually clear down in Fox where it
Wow.
went past. And it turned out that before they do that, the city council has to approve it, because what you're basically doing is building a road that allows people to drive up the canyon and completely bypass the town. And when they had it there before, council said, no, we don't
No,
want
I
you
thought it
bypassing
was
that
at 2
traffic
Mile
from.
Bridge. Wow.
I'm telling you what I found out as I went and
Because it was
researched
supposed to
it.
go from Highway 78 down to 212. And there is no Highway 78 by Fox.
No, this was done at the same time as 70, so it's Fox is where the turnoff was when I chased it down.
Wow, that's not the way I remember it, but that doesn't mean my memory's right either, so.
And when I went and researched it,
Yeah, no.
I was
believe
told,
it.
I was slapped and said it's not 2 Mile Bridge, it was Fox.
Huh, because 2 Mile Bridge would be going down to that roundabout from 78 would be the most, so we can alleviate some of that Brewery Hill traffic. Would be,
And
Most
it
li-
was
doesn't mean we
basically,
can't
the
do that.
problem, you have the same two issues that they had when they did the original Brewery Hill,
mhm.
that's money and physics.
Yeah,
And physics you fix with money, and so,
yeah.
the conversation was, I don't think I'll live to see that.
So we'll just continue to get
And because
complaints about traffic on Brewery
it's somebody
Hill.
else's money too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the city could build a street going down to the roundabout, because it's in the city
Right up to the
limits.
part where we got the price tag for it.
Yeah, that's true.
If we had an extra 10 million lying around
Brewery
someday,
Hill, the sign would be up on top.
yes, by kind of like the dog
Mhm.
parkish area.
Well, that's gonna make people happy that live on Brewery Hill.
And if you start out in Billings, we're the first town you hit that doesn't have one.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the reason is, nobody's put it in the budget, so that's why we put it in the budget.
No, I like that, definitely.
Yeah,
Okay.
they really work. I mean, I pay attention to them. I want to hit that green light.
You really?
Thank you.
You're not one of those who goes as fast as you can to see if you can break the sign? Oh.
There are reports that say there are people who do that, and they
I know.
talk about what you have them do and don't do, because there are people who go, ooh, bonus points, double play.
I know. It's blinking at me. Okay. So any other input? Chris, I mean, you and I, we can talk about this at admin too on Tuesday, because it'll be you and I basically.
The big point of you guys having this tonight is, so when we sat down, we had a meeting this week or last week, it was
Last week.
Tom, me, Lonnie, and Jody. And so that was Tom and Jody, but that wasn't, it's kind of like Jody coming in and saying, this is city council, saying, no, it's a board. And so you have,
Yeah.
so part of this is to come with the recommendations that Jody and Tom came with to the larger collective board
To
and
get
say,
your
yep, we're on
feedback
board, or we
and
want to
stuff.
change it. to turn it from two people's input to the board's input.
Selfishly, the vacuum truck, I think once we do buy it, we need to make a big deal about it. 'Cause I think people then will know, like, resort tax dollars go to that. It's something that, I mean,
Right.
it's silly, but I think that it's a big dollar
Yeah.
item, and so.
We can
Have
have a big,
a big bumper sticker on it says,
A big-
and we need to do that.
Maybe we should do a naming thing. I do.
Well-
We should
I know.
name it.
I know.
love that idea. We should put a contest out there for them, like, to name it.
And quite frankly, that Main Street, the sidewalks along Broadway, we ought to figure out how to put a sign out there
yeah.
that says, paid for with your resort tax dollar. Now, there's gonna be some people who are not happy about that,
That's, yeah.
but there are gonna be others that are.
I think that, yeah, I think basically just the things I hear around town is just people want to understand where the dollars go, and when they can see it, it makes sense.
Yeah.
When would the truck be purchased? Like, you know?
As soon as we get everything squared away, get it ordered.
Like this fall yet?
You know, it'll be next year.
So the other part of that problem is, see where that falls in the line? That falls in the, we wait until we have the money before we spend it part of the budget, as opposed to the we budget it part of the budget.
But, well, yeah, do you have the resort tax numbers for July yet? On how
I
many,
do,
how much was collected?
Lonnie may, but I don't have them.
Okay. Just, typically, it seems like it's over 600, isn't it? It's a lot. In July and then September. I thought we collected over half of the resort tax, I mean, like 3/4 of the resort tax in those 2 quarters.
Yeah.
So we'll know by October 20th how good we're going to be doing on our revenue. So,
Unless there's an unpredictable thing, like, you know,
yeah, but like I say, I
Global
mean,
pandemic
it's
or-
a lot. We collect the majority of our resort tax in those 2 fiscal quarters.
Yeah.
July 20th and October 20th, those payments.
our bonus comes right before Christmas.
It does, it does. And then we get a little bump from December for resort tax. And then the last quarter, it's just a crapshoot, depending on if we have snow or not, on what it's gonna look like, so.
Did you get your question answered?
Are you guys all okay with
Yep.
that? Okay, and those recommendations? Okay. Well, Chris and I will,
We have a audience participation.
yes. Did you have any input?
What brought you out tonight?
My wife said there's a resort tax committee, you should go to find out what I just did. That's basically
Do you-
it. I'm just,
do you
Because my
pay
wife
into
said
it?
so. I understand
had
that
absolutely no
logic.
agenda
Do
whatsoever.
you have a business that collects it?
What's that?
Do you have a business or anything that collects it? No? Okay. You're just-
Do you like numbers,
What's that?
the spreadsheets and numbers?
Well, I'm 35 years in finance.
There you go.
Okay.
Budgeting and forecasting.
That wasn't the question. Do you like spreadsheets and numbers? No.
Do you live here in Red Lodge?
Mhm.
Oh, okay. Full-time? That's you?
What's
He-
your name?
Okay.
Jerry Glenn.
Jerry Lynn.
Well, you should definitely consider, when you see an opening for one of these type of boards, if you're interested, volunteering.
He is currently our, are you on the advisory or the,
Well, I
The
chair the
approval-
architecture
yeah,
review
up-
committee for the Red Lodge.
up in Country
Oh,
Club
nice.
Estates?
I'll just make one comment.
Yes,
You
please.
want to take the 400,000 out because it's going someplace else?
It's being paid for out of someplace else, yeah.
Someplace else. I don't know, you know, and for me, with budgeting, you don't want to show that you're going to have cash at the end of the year, 427,000. Why don't you just put a line item in there for half that, 200,000, that way you just, if something comes up.
Well, that's,
And
We-
that's what we've done in the past. We've-
yeah, we do have a line item that, and that's kind of where that 600,000 down at the bottom is.
Okay.
And
That
that,
little contingency?
yeah, that's the
Okay.
contingency part.
Never mind. No, I'm good.
Nope, okay. Yeah,
Super.
we had
Well-
been calling it recreational development and streets. Like, we split it up between streets, we put 400, and recreational development, we put 425. And so that's where that $800-some-thousand ended up being carried forward, because we didn't end up spending any of that.
So to get your point, we have to openly squirrel it away.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna vote for the big red sucker.
Okay.
for the neighborhood.
Oh, I love it. It
What if
will
it's
be.
not red?
It'll be, it'll be.
Red lot.
There you go. I know, if you're gonna pay $500,000 for a truck, you can paint it.
I call it the suck truck because it's more fun than back truck.
That would be fun to have some community engagement with, like, name
I
the
know.
truck.
I like that
Oh,
idea.
God. Well, I could just, yeah.
Yeah, I think that'd be fun.
And definitely some good press coverage on it.
Yeah.
You know, Alistair's all over that.
I know. Well, and you can also use examples of how often you've had to use it and what it's been used for. I mean, everybody knows it.
Well, they've
Not
already,
everybody knows what it is.
they've
but-
already run 2 or 3 stories when we
Yeah.
pulled that truck out.
Yeah,
Between sewers
absolutely.
and waters and mines and.
Every day. When we have them.
Wow, every day?
Well,
Wow.
This time of year,
Yeah.
yeah, I'd say like 4 out of 5 days.
Wow.
It's not 8 hours a day every
See,
day.
that's
but
what
it's
we
every
use
day.
the resort tax, unlike our street sweeper that isn't out that often. You know, occasionally, you know, it's not, we paid a lot of money for that street sweeper, and I know it's been used a lot more this year than in prior years, but yeah, and everyday use is huge, is a huge use of our resort tax.
And we did, it's a lane change, but we did get somebody that reached out and commented on the street sweep prior to the car show. And I actually sent Rob a text and relayed it on as well. So it is appreciated, it is recognized.
It is, yes, yes. We couldn't have done the car show without the help of the city, that's for sure, and the city of Public Works and for
Tow
sure.
truck. I'll shut up because it's your meeting.
Okay, no, I think, are we all good? Okay, all right. Adjourned.
Thank you.
I guess, I'll send an email out. Typically, we meet the Tuesday in between our other ones. I don't know if we'll have to do that. When we start meeting again, what we're going to be doing is the survey, but we're also going to be reviewing the whole ordinance and what's taxed and what's not, because we're at our 5-year review period of the ordinance itself. So we'll have to, that'll be kind of a deep dive into how the wording and how everything's written on the tax, what's taxed and what's not, so, I mean, I'd prefer to wait till September, because I really want to get through summer.